A few years ago, a lady I know and her husband, they went to Egypt for a vacation holiday, and they visited the Great Pyramids, and then they went to the famous temple called at Karnak. It's famous for its columns, which are beautifully inscribed with hieroglyphics and things, and they're huge, I mean immense. And as they're walking through the columns of this temple, this famous temple, um, the lady stopped to take photographs of the inscriptions on the columns while her husband walked on ahead. After she'd finished taking the photograph, she turned and then she saw her husband up ahead, but behind him was a group of men with long robes and their heads shaved. So she thought, oh, this must be a tourist thing, you know, somebody dressing up as an Egyptian priest. She didn't think any more of it until she got back to England. And this was a film to be developed. She put the film in for developing. When it came out, there was her husband walking, but no priest. What happened to them? Or what were they, is more like it. We battle not against flesh and blood, we battle against spiritual wickedness in high places, as the Apostle says. We are surrounded by demons. And for some reason, the world out there doesn't seem to want to believe that they even exist. And I don't mean secular people. I mean even within the church, there are some that have their doubts. They say, well, it must be a psychological problem, whereas it is probably demon related. Now, we're not talking about demon possession. I've talked about that before, as you know. I'm talking about the effect that demons have on us. And in fact, as faithful believers, they have no power over us. They're helpless. Since St. Anthony the Great says, since the incarnation of Christ, the demons have lost their power over the faithful. I can't speak for the rest of the world, I don't know, but we are protected. One of the things I want to talk about, and St. Anthony mentions, is that you can't mix good and evil. You can't mix good and evil. They don't mix. So something you might think is a good thing to do could be wrong. It could be evil. When Christ cast out the demon, went to you remember on the Gospel on Sunday, he goes to the country of the Gergenes, and he sees these men coming out of the tombs who are demon-possessed. And the demons cry out when they see Jesus and say, "Thou Jesus, thou Son of God, are you come early to destroy us, to tempt us?" How does Christ answer? He actually casts them out, and they ask permission, because they have to have permission, to enter into the flock of swine. They couldn't do it themselves. That shows us that the demons can only do things to us, if they do, by permission. If you're a baptized Christian, you're protected, and that's it. If you give yourself over to evil things, then obviously that's a different issue, but you cannot be affected otherwise. Now, when Christ says doesn't talk to the demons, he gives them permission to enter the swine. Now, what he's doing there and showing us is that he cast out the demons. He didn't have a conversation with them. They recognized him as God, and he didn't say, "Oh, well done, you recognize me." He just said, "Out." If you remember the story of St. Paul and this girl who was a slave girl who had the power of divination. She could tell fortunes, and her employer, whoever it was making money out of it. She could tell somebody's future. When St. Paul saw her, what did he do? She saw St. Paul and she said, "These are from Jesus Christ. These are the famous, I can't remember the wording, sorry, I didn't look it up. These are servants of God, the Most High." What did Paul do? He cast out the demon. He didn't enter into conversation with it. He didn't mix good with evil. And then the spirit was expelled, and so the girl couldn't prophesy anymore. And the guy running the racket, the outfit, was out without money. And so very angry with St. Paul and the other apostles. Do not mix good with evil. Ah, yes, but she was, talking about God. So how can that be evil? How often have we heard that? Somebody say, well, they speak of God, so no, it must be good. No. The answer is no. We have to be discerning. While the world lies in the grip of Satan, the demons can do nothing against the faithful. St. Anthony says they can threaten, but since the incarnation, demons are powerless and their days are numbered, and they know it. They have no power over us unless we are curious and want to dabble in the occult. Because that's usually the way that people get devil-driven. Remember that demon possession is different from demon influence. The second is far worse, to be driven in every decision you make by demons. It doesn't mean to say you're possessed, but you don't have a free will because somebody else is telling you what to do in your mind. And this is why it's important to pray, and very important to get a blessing to do something. Priest gets the blessing from the bishop, and if in an emergency something, another priest. And you can do the same. If there's no priest and you want to make an important decision, you ask somebody that you trust. And God can speak through that person, so it doesn't have to be a priest. But don't do anything without a blessing. The demons, St. Anthony says that the demons are like actors on the stage. They appear in different forms, they have different voices, exactly like actors. I mean, St. Anthony was familiar with that at that time in Egypt. I mean, he's going into the desert, but he came from a very rich family. He must have seen some plays. Actors. And that's how they appear to people in different forms. Some to scare us, but far more evil is when they are being seductive. In other words, I'll give you an example. In England, there's what they call a spiritualist church, which is obviously demons, and it is actually an organized church. And I was taken there once as a child, out of curiosity, not my curiosity. And the lady that led the service was just like a Protestant service. She stood up and she spoke about Jesus. Jesus is love. Jesus is wonderful. She kept proclaiming the name of Jesus. And then she would stop and say, oh, there's somebody here that wants to talk to somebody. Yes, I know. The lady there's somebody standing behind you, and they want to give you a message from the spirit world. This is an example of the demons. Yet, the medium, a very nice middle-aged, pleasant-looking lady, talked about wonderful how Jesus was. Oh, and then they sang hymns. I say they because I didn't know what these hymns were. I was an 8-year-old. I got some messages as well, which fortunately I didn't understand. I ignored, and so nothing came of it. Spiritual. Don't mix. You cannot mix good and evil. Doesn't work. And this is how a lot of people think, unfortunately. When the demons attack, as the Desert Fathers tell us, they come in numbers, usually large numbers, and they come threatening. They're very threatening and to scare, but they can't actually harm us. And St. Anthony says when a true angel is sent by God, and he gives a quote about, well, it's probably the angel Michael, when he appeared against the Assyrians. This is going back to the Old Testament. When the angel was sent by God to the Assyrians, he came very quietly and he destroyed 185,000. These were troops ready to fight against the Israelites. When the angels appear, there is calm, peace. When the demons appear, even if they pretend to be peaceful, you feel confusion. There's a sense that, hey, this isn't right. So you can recognize them. And the demons can also take on human form. They do have bodies, but not in the sense that we have bodies. They have celestial bodies. And so because they are spirits, they can pass through walls, and doors, they don't need doors. They can pass through materials. But they are limited by space. In some of the fortune telling with the demons is that you ask them a question and they tell you in a dream or in prayer, a suggestion, right? Oh, somebody's ill. And you have a relative, say in New York, and they can travel and see that the relative is sick, and so they come back to you and say, so-and-so is ill, you need to pray for them. Go and see a priest. Well, this sounds good. But if you follow their advice, you begin to become captivated by it. Now, when the demon goes to New York, it takes time. Now, it doesn't take the normal flight time, but they have to travel. That's why when they mention something, there's always a pause before they come back with an answer, because they've had to go somewhere. They are bound by space. So they're very limited. They have to ask permission, and if anything happens to us, if we are tempted by demons or scared by them, it's because God has allowed it. And when we need to think about that, and we need to repent. But if we go to regular confession and have Prichastia, Holy Communion, then we are protected. And that we love our neighbour, because it's love that's really the basis of everything. You have respect for everybody, then the demons have no power. But people around you will be demonized, and they will try and draw you into the net that this is, the way things should be. Our Lord says, behold, I give you power to tread on scorpions and over all the power of the enemy. Christ says that. He gives us the power to be able to tread on the scorpions. Now, he's not talking about those creepy, crawly things. He's talking about evil that come in the form because they're poisonous. We have that power, is given to us. We must not be afraid. We should be afraid that we're not repenting. We should be afraid to disappoint God, because that's really what it is in the relationship. We say we fear God, but we fear to disappoint him. That's a healthy relationship with God. Not some God that's going to punish us if we don't do what we're meant to be doing. The only person that will punish us is the devil. But he's very subtle, very crafty, because he knows how each of one of us thinks and how we behave. We can dispel, if you're worried about things like that, you should make the sign of the cross. That will dispel the demons. Matushka Matrona, Moscow, she said, we don't cross ourselves enough. We don't cross enough. She said, every time you cross yourself, the demons fall. Now, we're surrounded by demons. Now, I can't give you statistics, obviously, but it's like 1 million. One of the fathers said there are 9 million demons around you. You can't move. You're pushing against them in order to walk about. That's how many there are. And yet, they cannot harm us. But we need to know that they exist, and this is important. I'm actually quoting St. Anthony here from the Evagetinos. This is a book of sayings of the Desert Fathers and teachings. It is a companion to the Philokalia. I recommend it because it's much easier to read than the Philokalia. It's very readable, and it's now published in English. Evagetinos means benefactress. Blagodayatlnitsa. It's named after a monastery in Constantinople of the Mother of God, Theotokos. Theotokos Yegetinos. Evgetinos, which means the Mother of God, the benefactor. I don't know why the book's called that, but that's what it means. It's a wonderful book, and I say it is available. St. Anthony, in the same book, St. Anthony talks about that he's in his cell one evening and there's a knock on the door. And he opens it, and there's this huge figure, a dark figure standing there. And St. Anthony says, "Who are you?" And the figure says, "I'm Satan." He said, "Well, what do you want?" Anthony could talk. Okay, he is a saint. Don't you try this, please. "Who are you, and why? What do you want?" He said, "Why do people hate me all the time? They're cursing me all the time. Why?" And St. Anthony says, well, why not? And he said, no, sorry. St. Anthony replies and says, "Why do you bother them?" And the Satan replies, "They disturb themselves." I don't bother them. They disturb themselves. Think about that. I have no power. And St. Anthony says, "You're always a liar, but now you've spoken the truth." Which is interesting, to get the devil actually to tell the truth, maybe only once in the history of the world. "Why do you bother them? They disturb themselves. I have no power. And Anthony says, "You're always a liar, but now you have spoken the truth. Christ has divested you of your power, and Satan, burned by the name of Christ, disappears." There's another story of we need to be able to distinguish between demons and angels when they, if and when they appear to us. There, the story of Joshua going into battle against the city of Jericho, and he's standing there, and this person comes, huge person, and Joshua says, "Who are you?" And he says, "I'm the captain of the hosts." Joshua realizes he's actually an angel, probably Archangel Michael again, and he falls to the ground and before him, and the angel says, "Take off your shoes. This is holy ground." This is a visitation of an angel. Now, I'm not saying that we should be hoping to see angels, because this is wrong. As one of the fathers again in here, a devil appeared to him and said, "I am Christ." And the desert father immediately closed his eyes, and he said, "Well, why aren't you looking at me? He says, "I don't want to see Christ, not in this world." And the demon disappeared immediately. Humility. That's the safeguard, is humility. And I've finished with another story from the Evangelos, because I want to refer to another book to finish. This is the story of St. Daniel, Abba Daniel, travelling through the desert, and it gets late, and he comes to a temple. It's a deserted pagan temple, but there's still skeletons in it, and maybe mummies, I don't know. But anyway, he spends the night there, and the demons are really sort of amazed that he would dare do this, and nobody else would dare go in that place. But what he does even more, he finds a skull, and he picks it up, and he puts it under his head as a pillow. And he's lying down. You probably know this story. And the demons can't believe that he has such audacity, such boldness. And so they play a trick on him. And with a voice, and one of them says, "Are you coming bathing tonight? Are you coming to the baths tonight?" And a female voice answers from the skull, on which Abba Daniel was lying on, and says, "No, I can't, because I've got this guy on top of me. I can't get it." And Abba Daniel says, "No, you're not going to go to the bath, but you need to go to where you come from. Go back to darkness." In other words, you're powerless. And obviously it didn't work to scare him. Now that's a bizarre example, and I hope we don't have to come across something like that. Another way that the devil can deceive us is through very simple visions. I know somebody who, during the night they woke up and their room was full of light. They couldn't find the source of the light, and there was a smell of perfume, like incense. The end of the story I can't really disclose, but there was obviously a demonic temptation. They wanted to believe that it was a sign of an angel, but their life didn't reflect that. It definitely was a demon. But I think it was to catch me. That's what I feel in retrospect. It was to catch me. And unfortunately, I don't believe in doing exorcisms because I'm not qualified. And so I just heard a confession and we just carried on as usual. Temptation, light, nice sweet smells, things, and sometimes even angelic singing. Usually it's demonic. Now if God sends a messenger to us and we say, basically, get lost, which is what we should say, God is not angry with us if it's an angel. He's rather pleased that we have the humility and not to be deceived. We're not worthy to have visions. That's how we should think. I'm not worthy to have visions. And close your eyes. I don't want to see Christ on this earth. I'll wait till later. This is not because they don't want to see, it's because it is humility. And so we don't seek for visions. The other book I want to mention, some of you may know it, I hope you don't actually, but you may know of it. It's written by a Gnostic philosopher, Basilides of Alexandria. He is originally from Syria, and he's second century philosopher. Well, he doesn't exist, he's a demon actually, but we discover that later. And he appears, he talks through the mind of a famous psychiatrist, famous, very famous, and tells him all sorts of things that he needs to know. And he starts to help him how to write his psychology. And the title of the book, which you may know, is Sermons to the Dead. It's a really delightful title for a book. And this Basilides is actually writing it. Well, during the writing of the book, or rather just before beginning the writing of the book, this psychiatrist was in his home, in his house, with his family, had a family, and while he was there, the eldest daughter saw this white figure go across the room and disappear. The second daughter was disturbed at night by having the covers of her bed taken off repeatedly. And the little boy, we were probably a 9-year-old, was having anxiety attacks. So the whole place and the family were haunted. This is what we would say, they were haunted. But once he'd got going on the writing, by the way, the writing was dictation. He was told what to write, and he wrote it down. It's not really relevant, but it stopped the moment that he started getting into writing. Well, in London, there's a shop called Watkins, which is off Tottenham Court Road. This is a famous road in London. And I saw this shop, and it's a shop of the occult. And I was curious. This is before I was I don't know whether Orthodox. I can't remember. It doesn't matter. I found it evil, actually. The stuff in it. I had a look through the windows, actually. I'm not going in there. Apparently, this psychiatrist, having this haunting, he went to this shop and told the owner, and the owner said, "We'll publish the book. We'd be very pleased to publish it." So they did. It was published, I think, in 1912, so that's how long ago it was. And I don't think it was very popular. In fact, I think most people couldn't read it. And most of that writing, and then his work as a therapist in particular, was through spirit guides. This comes from the Sermons to the Dead. So that's the opposite of the Je vergetet us, which is of the Holy Fathers. This is the demons. And in that he had a spirit guide who told him, helped him through various philosophical ideas and struggles. He was a great intellectual as well, and a philosopher, as well as a psychiatrist. And he had a spirit guide called Philemon. In fact, he had several spirit guides. And he said, it's, first of all, when I've heard these voices in my head, I thought, I'm either going crazy, or I'm not well, something like that. I'm working too hard. But then he realized, and he said, well, actually, the voice in my head has its own identity. I thought it came from me, because this is what he's studying. He's studying the subconscious. That was his thing. He said that with this Philemon seemed to be an entity in itself. It did not come from him, but it had an existence, and he could talk to it, and they could discuss all sorts of issues in philosophy, and he was enlightening me in a lot of things that I wanted to understand. And I suddenly realized, this is the psychiatrist talking, he says, I'm a Gnostic, and I'm related to the Gnostics of old. And this is one, I feel, such joy that I can be friends with these people. And then one of his spirit guides, another one, actually you shouldn't be mentioning names of these demons, it's not a good thing probably, said, you actually were guided, you're being guided by a guru who gives reflections on Hindu theology of 1,000 years ago. So the whole thing was Gnostic. And then it got picked up by people who were studying psychology. If you go to courses here in psychology, you will get not that stuff. You'll get a watered down version about the subconscious and the desires and whatever. I'm not going into the psychology. You can read that for yourself or not. I recommend not. But this is the basis of it. Now my concern is that when he died in 1961, actually, in 61 he died, and he was 81, and he wrote all these books. I mean, he wrote lots of books. He was a great influence in the world of psychology. Everybody is basing their psychology on him. Now we have somebody else who's a famous psychologist, who is a devotee, not just a disciple, but a devotee of this person. And is spreading the same stuff again at a different, but appropriate for the 21st century. And it is popular with Orthodox clergy. I would hazard a guess that if you go to seminary, I don't know about in St. Petersburg, but I don't think St. Peter, Russia is exempt this prelest, which is what it is that if you study psychology, then you pick up the good mixed with the evil. If I give you a glass of wine and put a little drop of cyanide in it, just a tiny amount, hardly you could see it, it would kill you. It would spoil the wine. Now, sorry, I'm hazarding a guess, and I'm putting myself on the line here, is that if you go to a seminary, you're likely to get that psychology. You will not get the Evergetinos. You will not get the Philokalia. The study of patristics, the study of the fathers is out of date. I hope I'm wrong, and I'm open to criticism or correction I should say, if I'm wrong, but I've got a feeling I'm right. This is the thing that faces Orthodox Church today. If we want to know how to deal with depression, how to deal with anxiety, how to deal with various compulsive addictions, then let's go to the Philokalia, because the answers are there. Don't go to this other stuff, which is godless. And not only is godless, it's demonic.